British Airways cut its Dubai flights from 3 a day to just 1. Sounds like the war caused it, right? Not exactly, because while BA was grounding aircraft and canceling routes, passengers were somehow still flying to Dubai every single day under a British Airways ticket. Same airline code, same loyalty points, same boarding pass, just not on a British Airways plane. So who was actually flying them? And why does the answer involve a contract signed a decade ago between two airlines that compete with each other every single day at Heathrow, one of which owns a quarter of the other? Once you know which is which, the whole story flips completely. A year ago, BA was flying 3 daily Dubai rotations. 6 months ago, every single one vanished overnight. Here's the version you've already read. On the morning of March 8th, 2026, a few hours after US and Israeli strikes hit Iranian military targets, an Iranian drone slammed into a fuel tank near Dubai International Airport. Smoke visible for miles. Iran shut its airspace. Iraq closed half of its own. Israel went dark to foreign carriers. By lunchtime, BA had grounded every flight to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, Bahrain, and Tel Aviv. 200 UK-bound flights canceled in 48 hours. 8,000 passengers stranded across the Gulf. 4 rescue rotations out of Muscat with seats selling out in hours. That's the version everyone covered. Here's what that version leaves out entirely. And here's where the story gets genuinely strange. Because while BA's aircraft were grounded, the airline kept selling Dubai tickets. Every single day of the so-called grounding, you could log on to ba.com, type in London to Dubai, and book a flight. The aircraft just had a different paint job. A Qatar Airways plane going through Doha. A BA flight number on the boarding pass. BA still collecting the revenue. Now imagine you're sitting in a hotel room in Dubai that morning. Your phone won't stop vibrating. One cancellation alert after another. You call British Airways and sit on hold for 90 minutes thinking your trip home is completely ruined. Then the agent says something strange. There are no BA flights, but Qatar Airways, tomorrow morning through Doha, same ticket, same Avios, same lounge access. She takes it. Of course she takes it. Hold that scene, because the question it raises is the one nobody in the press actually answered. Who has really been flying you to the Gulf? And here's a clue. The airline quietly handling BA's Gulf passengers also happens to own a quarter of BA's parent company. Why would a direct competitor do that? Hold that thought, because the answer goes back further than you'd expect. In 2015, Qatar Airways, the state-owned national carrier of Qatar, started buying shares in International Airlines Group, the holding company that owns British Airways. Qatar Airways began with a 9.99% stake. The buying never really stopped. By 2020, that stake had crossed 25%. The increase alone cost £604 million in cash. Today, that 25.14% holding is worth roughly 5.4 billion euros, about a quarter of IAG's entire 21 billion euro market cap. Let that land for a second. The largest single shareholder of BA's parent company is the state of Qatar, held by the airline competing with British Airways every single day at Heathrow. Now, zoom out. In 2016, those two airlines formed what they openly call the world's largest airline joint business. 185 destinations, more than 60 countries, shared revenue, coordinated schedules, each selling the other's seats as if they were their own. Every Qatar Airways flight into Heathrow carries BA flight numbers, 56 weekly into Heathrow alone, plus a double daily out of Gatwick. Everyone earns BA Avios. Everyone gives BA Gold members the same lounge access they'd get on a BA Metal flight. So let's simplify this. BA stopped flying. Qatar kept flying. But BA still got paid. And every passenger BA appeared to lose to the war was still booked under a BA flight number on a Qatar Airways plane, while BA's biggest shareholder pocketed a share of the revenue. This story didn't start in 2026 or even 2015. It started in 1985, and this is where it becomes genuinely extraordinary. That year, the ruler of Dubai needed an airline, so he hired a British man named Maurice Flanagan to build one. Flanagan was a former British Airways manager, spent his early career inside the airline. He was about to spend the next 40 years quietly dismantling. He started Emirates with 2 leased aircraft and a few hundred staff. By the time he died, Emirates was the largest international airline in the world, 260 wide bodies, $39.6 billion in revenue, a record $6.2 billion profit in fiscal 2024 to 2025. Think about that for a second. The man British Airways trained personally built the competitor that has been eating BA's lunch for 4 decades. For 40 years, BA's London to Asia traffic has been bleeding onto a company one of its own former managers created. Air France retired its entire A380 fleet in 2020. Lufthansa parked its fleet in the Spanish desert. Qantas signed a joint venture with Emirates so deep it ceded most of its Australia to Europe network. And this is the uncomfortable truth European airlines spent decades trying to avoid. They were fighting a battle they were structurally built to lose. Here's what that structural disadvantage actually looks like. Heathrow slots trading for over £50 million. UK crew on UK contracts, a 7-hour flight against a carrier whose home is the destination. Inside an Emirates A380 cockpit, the pilot lives in Dubai. The fuel is bought in Dubai. The maintenance is done in Dubai. The plane sleeps in Dubai. Every single cost is denominated in a currency pegged to a country with no income tax and a government that owns the airline. Now compare that to a BA 777 flying the same route. The pilot lives in West London. The fuel is paid in pounds. The maintenance is at Heathrow. The plane spends half its life parked at a slot that costs more than a house in Mayfair. There is no version of this where BA wins on price. There is no version where it wins on frequency. The competition isn't unfair, it's structural. And structural disadvantages don't get solved with bigger planes or better marketing. They get managed. And honestly, from a business perspective, it's hard not to admire how quietly effective BA's management strategy turned out to be. In 2016, BA signed the joint business with Qatar, and the next decade of Gulf revenue stopped depending on BA aircraft entirely. But to understand why BA was already prepared for this retreat, you have to go back 40 years to a moment that had nothing to do with Qatar, because the war wasn't the beginning of the retreat either. In December 2024, 15 months before any drone hit any fuel tank, BA quietly killed its entire Heathrow to Abu Dhabi route for the whole of summer 2025. Rolls-Royce was running behind on Trent 1,000 engines. BA's 787 fleet was missing aircraft. Something had to give. They picked Abu Dhabi. The route had only been restarted in April 2024. It vanished again before its second birthday. When customers called to rebook BA, pointed them at Etihad and Qatar. The rebooking script was already written. The codeshare slots were already coded. By the time Iranian drones hit Dubai fuel tanks 15 months later, the machinery just had to be switched on. The war didn't create the retreat. It accelerated one that was already quietly underway. When BA confirmed in April 2026 that its phased return would cap Dubai at 1 daily flight, the aircraft that used to operate those second and third rotations didn't disappear. Bangalore doubled. Nairobi went the same way. Mumbai picked up a third daily. Singapore and Bangkok absorbed the rest. None of those routes are listed as temporary. And on every single one, you can connect onward via Doha on Qatar Airways with a BA flight number. Here's the weird part. The joint business doesn't leave gaps, it fills them. And there's one more detail in BA's April announcement that almost nobody covered properly. Buried between the Dubai resumption date and the Riyadh frequency cut, a single line, London to Jeddah, cancelled, no return date. That is the only Gulf route BA has actually walked away from permanently. Dubai is back on July 1st, Doha and Tel Aviv with it, Bahrain and Amman in October, Abu Dhabi later in the winter. The only one not coming back is Jeddah. And the reason is the simplest one in this entire story. Jeddah was the only Gulf route where BA had no joint business cover. No Qatar Airways sitting downstream. No partner splitting the revenue. BA running alone on its own metal with no codeshare safety net underneath it. The only route with no return date is the only route where BA was truly flying alone. That pattern tells you everything about the real strategy. Now go back to that hotel room in Dubai. She lands at Heathrow 12 hours after the call. The plane is a Qatar Airways A350 with a BA flight number on the boarding pass. The seat is wider than what BA flies on the same route. The food comes out of an actual oven, not a microwave. The lounge in Doha had a swimming pool. She walks out of arrivals and files the expense report. The flight number says BA. The Avios drop into the same account they always did. The corporate travel manager files no complaint. To the customer, almost nothing changed. Same booking system, same loyalty rewards, same premium treatment. Only the aircraft tail was different. BA pays its joint business cut to Qatar and keeps the customer. Now scale that across an entire crisis. The same week, BA was running Muscat repatriation flights. Its own travel page was directing affected customers to partner airlines and adding Heathrow capacity elsewhere. Asia-bound traffic that used to connect through Dubai got reabsorbed. Gulf-bound traffic got rebooked via Doha. Every rebooking sat under the joint business agreement, signed in 2016. The schedule showed a 66% capacity cut on BA metal. The code share showed nothing. Because on a boarding pass, the code share is completely invisible. And there's a reasonable chance this has already happened to you, that you've flown Qatar Airways metal through Doha on a BA ticket and filed the expense report without ever being told your flight was operated by a different airline owned by a different country. So go back to the question we started with. If BA abandoned Dubai, why are its passengers still landing there every day? BA stopped flying. Qatar kept flying. BA still got paid. The metal is leaving. The flight numbers are staying. And the long handoff that started when Maurice Flanagan walked out of British Airways in 1985, Heathrow to Bombay, Heathrow to Sydney, Heathrow to Singapore, all those routes BA used to dominate now mostly code shares. That handoff is more or less complete. Bangkok is on the joint business now. So is Cape Town. The press releases for those routes haven't been written yet. The timetable changes will come first. They always do. But here's the question worth sitting with. If your ticket says British Airways, your miles go to British Airways, your booking happens on British Airways, but another airline flies you, owns a quarter of the company, and shares the revenue. Maybe the real question isn't whether BA left the Gulf. Maybe it already sold it, quietly, and nobody noticed, because the boarding pass still said the right name.